Okay, I think we're each going to try to blow through some kind of quick overview stuff so we can leave more time for conversation and Q&A at the end. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the work that Ecotrust has done, and then mention 3 other related initiatives that it sounds like y'all are probably following or have already started to look at as well too. So I'm going to dive in first with some updates on Ecotrust-led research and the partnership we have with Carbon Leadership Forum. So kind of the latest and greatest was that we released an interactive map several months ago that kind of shows the proof of concept of how we can track carbon stock change in forests over time and how we can relate that to the timber output that's being produced by different landowner types around the region. And so this is an interactive map. For example, if you go to it, you can click on any county you want and then see how the different landowners have produced timber over time and what their carbon stock is over time. And at this point, we're kind of telling you that there's an embodied carbon impact there, but we're not giving you a direct quantification of it yet. So there's a variety of methods that we're still ironing out that I'll talk a little bit about. But there's also a research brief that you can check out that describes in more detail what is involved in that. Coming back here, one of the things that I point out as well, we gave a presentation recently at the AIA Seattle, at an AIA Seattle meeting, and talked in particular about tribes, about some of the work that we were doing that quantified tribal forestry impacts. So just wanted to give you a quick glimpse of that. It's kind of like the latest research finding that we've released so far. And it's based on the idea that federally recognized tribes have had this kind of standardized reporting mechanism to the Bureau of Indian Affairs for decades now. So every tribe with substantial forest holdings has been reporting on a regular basis how much timber they're producing and what their standing inventory is. And so we have the ability to actually, compared to other landowners, we have like increased visibility into the work that tribes are doing, but didn't include it in the public facing map because we didn't actually ask for any kind of authorization or approval from any tribes. So kind of didn't want to do any individually identifying information in that web platform. But what we could see, for example, if we look at whether the carbon stocks, this is for 57 tribes across the country, not just in the Northwest. What we could track for the tribal forests, have they gone up or gone down in carbon over time? And what you'll see, this is across the whole country. You've kind of got this like cloud that's going above zero. So you have this idea that most tribes are sequestering more carbon than they're releasing in their forests over time. So again, just kind of more justification that like the assumption of carbon neutrality is not a good one to hang your hat on. And then when we look in particular at Western Oregon and Washington, where we have a pretty good idea that climate smart and carbon friendly are pretty much hand in hand. What you see is that this is what the industry looks like. It's floating around zero. You know, there's noise around it, but this is all the counties in Western Oregon and Washington with industry forest land reported of the stock change over time. And then you look at the tribes in Western Oregon and Washington, and it's definitely not floating around zero. So just kind of another good indication that where the wood is coming from matters, and that you shouldn't assume that all producers are created equal. And there's some work that's ongoing right now that we've been collaborating with Steph Carlisle from Carbon Leadership Forum. So we convened a technical advisory committee to work through a lot of the issues of how to do this type of accounting and to explore some of the caveats and confounding issues that come up with it. And so we have a 17-member committee that's got pretty diverse representation from folks across the US with a concentration in the Northwest. And these are some of the outputs that we're going to be generating. There'll be a research brief that describes the type of data we explored, the methods that we use to come up with these impact factors. We'll produce a summary report that describes the level of agreement and provide an opportunity for people that have a dissenting perspective to voice that. And then we'll also produce the code and the data. We'll release the code and the data that's used to kind of do our analyses. You can access the charter for the committee that actually walks through in much more detail the specific issues that we're going to be walking through here. But basically, we've got 5 meetings scheduled through the end of the year with this committee, and we just finished the second one maybe 3-4 weeks ago. So we're just now starting to dive into the weeds in terms of the methods for doing these calculations and the different data sources that we have available for doing them. And we're expecting to try to have a very clear roadmap for how to do this analysis across the lower 48 within a year, if not sooner. So coming to some of these other initiatives that I wanted to give you a quick update on. It sounds like y'all had looked at the SFI carbon tool. I think this is a pretty interesting example that is similar to the map that we used, except it doesn't differentiate by owner types. It doesn't even really differentiate for SFI versus non-SFI owners, but it is basically indicating that there are public data available to do more granular reporting about how forests are changing over time. So I think it's kind of like an indication of increasing transparency that is going to be coming, and worth just playing around to get to understand some FIA data a little bit as well too. There is also updates that are forthcoming to the greenhouse gas protocol. So this is for corporate carbon accounting, and they're updating their land sector and removals guidance. So this hasn't been publicly released yet, but there is more guidance coming out in terms of how to account for biogenic carbon in a supply chain, for example, for a corporation, that are worth watching. And then similarly, there are members of the NNCASI, I think this is the National Council for Air and Stream Improvement or something like that. It's an industry-funded research group that is doing regional analyses following these updated guidance. So we'll expect that there's more granular information like you see in that SFI carbon tool coming out specific to members within NNCASI that are going to start disclosing what's happening in different regions of the United States on their property instead of just using public FIA data that's not even necessarily from their property. And then the last update I'll give you quickly was that there was a brief emergence of an effort to develop a new product category rule that was being led by Building Transparency. And that is basically on ice right now. So the idea was that they would develop a new product category rule for roundwood, is basically logs, that would try to get at inserting consideration of the carbon stock change in a forest over time. So very similar to what we're talking about doing with our research, but basically that the takeaway was that the research community and the LCA community didn't have a clear standard yet, or didn't have a clear body of evidence yet to justify doing a PCR, which requires an LCA as part of it. So they're basically kind of waiting for some of the work that we're doing and some of these other initiatives to have a really clear path of, it's obvious that the science is now illustrating a clear way to go about this kind of work. So expect that this will get dusted off and pick back up at some point in the next 6 months, 12 months, something like that. And that's it. So looking forward to your questions.